Welcome back to the show, everybody. On today's episode, we have Ryan Lavarnway. Ryan Lavarnway is a former MLB catcher, World Series champion, and Olympian. Now he's a leadership coach and keynote speaker. Lavarnway brings a dynamic storytelling to his uplifting speaking engagements on leadership, potential, and a winning mindset. Today's episode is brought to you by All Black Everything Performance Energy Drink, the official energy drink of the Athletic Fortitude podcast, available in Walmart, Meijer, and select GNC franchise locations. This episode is also brought to you by Mettle. Are you a student athlete looking to take your game to the next level, or a parent wanting to support your young athlete's mental performance? Let me introduce you to Mettle, the ultimate mental performance coaching platform designed specifically for student athletes. Mettle combines cutting-edge AI technology with expert human coaching to help athletes build mental toughness, boost confidence, and perform under pressure. Whether you're struggling with pregame jitters, recovering from an injury, or just want to sharpen your mental edge, Mettle has you covered. The best part? Mettle offers flexible pricing tiers to fit any budget, starting at just $49 a month. That's less than the cost of a single session with most sports psychologists. Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit mettle.coach today and use the code podcast for a special 10% discount on your first month. Remember, champions are made in the mind. With Mettle, you're not just playing the game, you're mastering it. And with that said, on today's show, Ryan Lavarnway. You moved 65 times in 15 years for your career. You were cut, traded, or demoted 26 times. Why'd you keep playing?
Why did I keep playing? What else would I rather do? That's
the question.
Thing. Yeah, that was my thing, was as long as I still thought that I was good enough, or that I thought I had good baseball left in me, I wanted to keep going. And the minute I thought I either wasn't good enough or that the sacrifice didn't feel worth it anymore, that's when I ended up deciding to move on. Because for 15 years, I missed every birthday party. I missed every wedding, unless my friends decided to get married in December where I could go. Like my sister and my best friend are the only ones. Every other wedding I missed, or my wife went by herself. I missed the birth of my niece and nephew. I missed funerals, bachelor parties, none of it, and it wasn't even an option. It didn't feel like a sacrifice because I was chasing the thing I loved and I was chasing my goal and my dream. And when it did feel like a big sacrifice, when it did feel like I wanted to go to those things, that's when I stopped playing.
Do you think people who don't feel that could ever have the type of success that you did?
I think if you would happen to be the best in the world, I think there's some people that are extremely, extremely talented that don't love baseball or don't love the journey and the fight, then get away with it. I think it catches up to them. One example is Anthony Rendon. He very famously and very unpopularly said how much he doesn't love baseball when he's making hundreds of millions to do it. There's some people that are good enough to get away with it. Most people, myself included, I had to give it everything.
So we frequently want things, but we're not willing to pay the price to do those things. If you think that you want something, how can you maybe get your actions to align with what you want if it's not genetically in you to just work hard?
It's $1 million question, isn't it? I think you need to understand that in order to be great at anything, you have to be obsessed in some way. I really believe that the new popular work-life balance is a myth if you want to be great. You could be average or even above average and have a lot of balance in your life. But if you want to be truly, truly great, really stand out, you need to find balance in the obsession.
What was it about baseball that made you obsessed with it?
So many things. I love that it's hard. I love the struggle. The fact that you fail more than you succeed makes when you do succeed feel that much sweeter. I think it's fair. I love that so much of our culture and so much of being an adult and the lessons I've learned in life can be taught through baseball. Of learning to go for something bigger than yourself, for a team goal, something that takes time, something that you need to struggle to earn. The game is beautiful. And I think one of the former commissioners of baseball, Paul Giamatti, or Bart Giamatti, whatever the dad's name is, he wrote a lot of poetry about the game also, and how a baseball is one of the most beautiful objects in the world, because when you hold it in your hand, you instinctually know that it's meant to be thrown far. And a bat, you hold it in your hand and you instinctually know that you're supposed to swing it hard and hit something. It's a beautiful game.
Were you always genetically wired to enjoy hard things, or did you have to learn?
Man, I don't know. Now that I'm a parent of a young child, I follow all these parenting posts, blogs, pages, whatever. It's my first time. I'm still learning, right? I learn as I go. But I see all this research about, as a parent, you reward effort, you get more effort. Or if you reward results only, you get kids that take shortcuts or want to get results even if the results are meaningless. And I know that my father always praised effort. He praised, I don't care how you actually did you do your best? And I still remember that to this day, where it's like, I don't care if you get straight A's as long as you do your best. Well, my best was straight A's. That's how I got into Yale. Right? I don't care if you're the best player on the team as long as you do your best. Well, my best was an all-star. In order to do my best, I knew I needed to work my hardest. So I give a lot of credit in that regard to my dad. And I hope I can give that to my kid, in that you reward the effort, you get more effort.
It's funny because I would say I ended up being both. So as a kid, I became very much obsessed with the outcome and not necessarily the process of the journey. And I was fortunate enough, I was born with a high level of intelligence. And I was in advanced learning all throughout elementary, middle school, high school. But it got to a point where I stopped trying and I would use it as a fallback. I'd be like, oh, imagine if I did try, I'd get straight A's or do whatever. Right. And really that was just a cover up because I was afraid to challenge myself, and I'd look for those shortcuts like you just said. And I had to learn how to really enjoy the hardship. And fortunately, I loved sports always, and I worked really, really hard in sports, but I had to learn how to apply that in other domains of my life. For me, it's been hard to articulate, other than just once you do it, once you work through something hard and come out to the other side, like you said, that reward is just amazing. With your own kid or future kids, or when you do public speaking, how do you get someone to step into the depth of hard?
I think that's why I get hired by so many corporations to do motivational speaking, is because sports is such a common language. And I'd say even if it was just for a season or two, or it was an obscure sport of some variety, almost everyone has played sports of some variety. And I think you'd agree with that. Even if you don't love sports as an adult, you understand the language. You understand what a strikeout means, even if you've never struck out. You understand what a home run is, even if you've never hit a home run. And sports is the best venue for failure. It's the best venue to learn how to fail, because you're put on display. And it's so obviously has nothing to do with you as a person. It's your actions. It's your play. It's what you did. So it's a proving ground for how to learn how to deal with failure. And those metaphors translate so perfectly to sales teams, to entrepreneurs, to individual contributors. It just makes so much sense to lean on shared experience in sports, even if it's a different sport, even if it was 20 years ago. Those stories have power, and that's what I share with
You said something earlier about, as long as you felt you were good enough, you were going to keep playing. What were some of the signs that you needed to tell yourself that you were good enough despite facing all that adversity?
you. Good question. For me, it's about reframing, and this is a lesson I learned in high school. I physically am not. I mean, I'm a big person, right? And I grew to be 6'4", and at my biggest, I was in the 250s in weight in the big leagues. Physically, I'm big, but I was never the strongest. I was certainly never the fastest. In fact, I was actually probably the slowest amongst my professional peers. My throwing arm ranked right around average at every level that I played at. So I was never like a tryout superstar. You wouldn't see me in a group of 100 be like, that's the guy. I had to do the little things right, the intangibles, the being a good baseball player with touch and feel who controls the strike zone and is a smart base runner because he's never going to steal bases. So for me, I had to look for the things that I could stand out on, right? Reframe the conversation to, yeah, he doesn't have the strongest arm as a catcher, but he gets rid of it quick and he's accurate, right? So he still throws out more people than the guy with the strong arm. And if the guy with the strong arm did the things he did well, then that guy'd be the best in the world, right? Or he doesn't hit the ball 120 miles per hour off the bat, but 104 gets it over the fence, and a home run in the first row counts the same as the home run on the third deck, right? So finding those consistencies, finding the things that I was good at and how I could lean into my own strengths and reframe the conversation, not only just in my own head, but reframe the conversation I had with people as to, these are my strengths. I know their strengths. How could I strengthen them? Because people want to rely on what your strengths are. There's such a conversation, and I was guilty of this, especially early in my career, of you only want to work on your weaknesses so that you don't have any weaknesses. Well, if you don't have any weaknesses, but you also don't have any standout strengths, who cares? Right? I could name players in the big leagues that only have one strength, and everything else is a weakness, but their one strength is so strong, they're 10-year big leaguers. Let's think of Joey Gallo. This guy is known as a power hitter. He does not hit for average, does not have a strong arm. He doesn't run particularly well. He doesn't play defense. $100 million, right? Let's talk about Billy Hamilton. Fastest guy on the planet. Okay at defense, bad hitter, no power, okay at defense, right? Like one strength, signature strength, does it so well. So I had to reframe and I had to learn, don't just work on your weaknesses. Give yourself a strength that stands out.
What was your strength that stood out?
I think it was controlling the strike zone, hitting for, hit tool and some power were my signatures.
One thing I noticed towards the end of your career, particularly probably the last 2 or 3 years, maybe the last 4 years with the Pirates, the Reds, I forget the last team. I think it was the Indians, now Guardians. In short stints in the MLB, you had crazy success. What was it about? Why didn't you get more games? How frustrating was it when your OPS, and granted, short sample size, but your OPS is over 1,000, but you're not getting the at-bats or maybe opportunities that you want?
Yeah, I try not to focus on the lack of opportunity because that's not something I could control, right? That's a recipe for frustration and poor play and going down the wrong rabbit hole. What I learned later in my career was that context doesn't matter when it comes to performance. What I mean by that, it's easy for me to sit here and say, my rookie year in games that I started, so 2011, in games that I started, I hit over 300. And in my pinch hit appearances, I was 0 for 26. Where league-wide, pinch hitters perform worse than starting players because XYZ. There's 100 reasons I could list, and it would sound like excuses because at the end of the day, you're going to say, Ryan, in your rookie year, you hit 217 because the context doesn't matter. But if you had put me in the starting lineup, every time that I was in the starting lineup, I hit over 300. Same thing, 2012. The next year, my next opportunity in the big leagues, I was hitting 330 in AAA, started the All-Star team, got called up, didn't perform well. Well, I was hot, I was cold at the wrong time. Doesn't matter. Context doesn't matter. So eventually I got to a point where I was like, even if I only play day games where we don't take batting practice, even if I only play against Cy Young winners, because those are the days I get the opportunity, it doesn't matter. You have to perform. And once I got over allowing myself to make excuses, allowing myself to think of the context, I was like, okay, well, we have to get results even in the hardest of times because nobody cares what your excuse is. Nobody cares what the context is. And that changed my mindset a lot.
How long did it take you to get there?
A long time because I could see the same things you could see of like my OPS was over 1,000. I'm better than Bryce Harper right now. Why am I not playing more? That guy's making $400 million. Nobody cares. Took a lot of growing up and a lot of maturity to get to that.
How can you get to it at a younger age?
Another $1 million question.
That's what I'm trying to unpack here.
How do you get maturity at a younger age?
That's the question.
Part of it probably comes with self-awareness and self-honesty. Part of it is, I think when you're young, you probably need a little bit of that bravado. So I'm gonna specifically not answer your question because I think it's the wrong question.
Okay. What's the right question?
I'm gonna tell you a story. Of the 26 times that I got sent down or released from the major leagues, I kind of got good at it, at having that meeting that, hey, Ryan, we got to send you down. I know, right? Like, I'm going to be a pro. I'm not going to ever beg you to change your mind. I'm not going to ask why, right? Doesn't matter. One of the times I got sent down, it was spring training with the Indians. Last year they were called the Indians. Terry Francona says, we're going to send you down. And I say, I know. And he looks back at me and he says, sometimes being a really good self-evaluator doesn't always serve you. Sometimes you have to be just dumb enough to think you're better than you are. And I think there's a time and place for that, right? Because if everybody was completely honest with themselves, most people would not belong in the major leagues. Most people would not belong in the excellent world-class level of anything. Most people. There are the few standouts, the Mike Trouts, the Shohei Ohtanis. But most people need to, in a version, fake it till they make it. And there's a time and place for that. Right? The high school athlete, right, that is trying to get drafted into the major leagues has no business making $7 million as a high school athlete. But that's what the market supports, right? That's the business of baseball. And if that kid is being honest with himself too much, they could be setting self-imposed limitations on how great they could be as they grow into that ability, as they continue to grow and get stronger and get experience. So you're looping all the way back and landing this plane. You said, how do you get that maturity at a younger age? I'd say in some ways, I don't want young players having that. And in some other ways, it would be helpful. So it's that knowing when to circumvent context and knowing when to keep context in mind is probably more important than having maturity that's earned over decades too soon.
It's the balance between irrational confidence and imposter syndrome in finding that fine line and learning when to push each button. And I think the hardest part, even in my own life now, is knowing when to do which. And I'm not sure there is a right answer, but I always have to ask the question because even going back to your reframing point, I just learned how to reframe maybe a year, 18 months ago, 2 years at the most. And just the dynamic change that's had in my own life and learning how to reframe, and how I think that's one of the most important topics to teach people is how to reframe your situation to where it helps you change your actions. What has been the biggest, I hate the word motivation, but for lack of a better term, I'll use it here. What has been the biggest motivator for you in getting your actions to where you want them to be?
That's the carrot and the stick argument, right? My biggest goals, my biggest dreams were play in the big leagues, win a World Series. Got to do that. Be a good teammate, make a bunch of money. My biggest fear was not living up to my potential or leaving something on the table. So those are two sides of the same coin that both drove me to be my best. And I think some people are carrot people, some people are stick people. And I think for me, the carrot and the stick were the same.
Do you feel you lived up to your potential?
I do with it, given the opportunities that I was given. I feel like I have so much to be proud of. I got really good at not quitting when I probably should have quit way sooner, right? Even my agent told me 5 years before I ended up retiring from baseball, start thinking about what's next. And I wasn't ready to hear it. He came from a place of not wanting me to get blindsided and a place of caring about me, which I appreciated. But I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready to give up. So I didn't. I played for 5 more years after he had that conversation with me. And do I wish I had been given more opportunity? Yes. Do I wish, I had made $100 million and had 10 years of service time and multiple World Series rings? Yes, of course. I think everyone does. I think Derek Jeter wishes he had won another World Series. I think everybody does. But I think given the opportunity that I was afforded, I did. I have a lot to be proud of.
What was the proudest moment of your career?
I have a hard time with that question because I think team success is more important than individual success. So winning the World Series with Boston was incredible, especially with what Boston had been through earlier in that season with the bombings on Marathon Monday. I also didn't play in the playoffs. So as much as I helped the team get there, as much as I hit 299 that season, I didn't feel responsible for the actual championship. If we go to individual success, my debut with the Reds, where I broke a Reds franchise record for most RBIs in a debut, the story around that happening, to me, makes me feel more proud. And the story is that I went to spring training with the New York Yankees that year. The year before that, I was with the Pittsburgh Pirates the whole year in AAA, the entire AAA season. And the first month of the 2018 season, I was playing so poorly that I went to my AAA manager's office and asked how much longer I could keep up this poor performance until I got released. I literally asked him, when are you going to release me? I know I'm playing that bad. And, to his credit, he said the thing that got me back on track. And I played a great year. I ended up earning an all-star game in AAA in 2018 and getting called up at the end. I'm getting 6 at-bats in the major leagues, nothing. They were basically courtesy at-bats. Going into spring training with the Yankees, and I played awful for the Yankees. I was a terrible Yankee. Terrible. Maybe it's because I love the Red Sox. But I was so bad, and I ended up tearing my oblique, and I was on the injured list, and I was letting myself get fat. And I ended up getting released from AAA that year in 2019 from the Yankees. AAA released. And I called my agent. I said, did you ask for this? He said, no. I don't know if you'll ever get a job again. It's the middle of the season. Everyone has their catchers. I had a flat tire in the parking lot, so I got released from AAA, couldn't leave the stadium, stuck there. And while I'm waiting for AAA to come fix my tire, I get a call from the Reds. And they said, we had 2 catchers get hurt. If you sign with us, you're starting in the big leagues tomorrow. So I went from the lowest of lows in my career of feeling like I got released. I earned it. I played so poorly. I earned it. I'm not in shape. I'm not playing well. I just came off the injured list. To going in a big time situation in an opportunity that I probably didn't deserve and having the best game of my life. And, it's just a testament to the power of focusing on what's possible. And you can turn around any situation. And I'm very, very proud of what I was able to do with the Reds. And then to get back to the big leagues again the next year, very proud of that.
What's the difference between you playing poorly in AAA than becoming an all-star for AAA? What's the difference between you performing poorly for the Yankees and then having the best game of your life for the Reds? What is it maybe that didn't allow you to have that success all the time?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a streaky game of hot, cold. I got another $1 million question. If you could bottle up good performance all the time, people would do it. It's a $1 billion industry. Baseball is such a game of millimeters, right? If I hit the ball 101 miles per hour at 29 degrees, it's caught. If I hit it 102 at 30 degrees, it's a homer. It's a huge difference. I played in the only era where shifting was allowed, where they knew exactly where you hit it most of the time, and they put a guy there, right? It was these balls in the 6-hole were they were a hit for 100 years, then they were an out only during my career, and now they're a hit again because they outlawed the shift, right? Things like that where if a guy throws a sinker and his finger slips off the seam, he throws a meatball, you hit it. Or he throws the best pitch of the day and you happen to be up because of the way you stood in the box. It made him feel more comfortable, or the way you stood in the box made the pitcher uncomfortable, right? There's such a streakiness. And as far as what was different, where's your head at? How comfortable are you in the locker room? How comfortable are you in your own skin? How comfortable are you with the way the coach is communicating with you? There's so much that goes into it that being a human being is messy. And, if you're 100% confident or you're 98% confident, that 2% of doubt changes everything.
How hard were you on yourself? Or how much grace did you give yourself?
For the most part, I think back and forth. In my best years, I don't know. I think I was always a comfort food kind of guy. My wife was in the bakery industry for a while, so the years that I got really fat were probably also the years I hit really well. Because anytime there was a couple strikeouts, there was some chocolate chip cookies involved, or some coffee cake when she was working at this one bakery in Maine. One of my teammates asked when I was going to start sharing my stuff. My wife was like, "What do you mean? I sent him with a full coffee cake yesterday."
Oh, I have such a sweet tooth, so I can appreciate that so much. And I'm very grateful my wife is not in that industry because I would be 5'9", 350 pounds. So I I can appreciate that. How did you get to the point where you were so, and we're not perfect, but so successful at having those conversations with yourself?
Help. Mentors, coaches. I don't know if you're going to get to this question eventually, but a question I get asked a lot is, you played for almost half of the league. What was your favorite team to play for? Right? I think the easy and the obvious answer is the Red Sox because it's the biggest name. They won the World Series when I was there. We won the World Series. But I always go back to I loved playing for the Pirates and I loved playing for the Indians. And let me tell you why. The Indians, the culture was great. And that starts at the top with Terry Francona. He made me feel like I could run through a wall. I already told you the story. He was sending me down and giving me confidence at the same time. He was incredible at that. The Pirates, what I loved about them, two things. One, the Pirates try to live up to Roberto Clemente's legacy. So I ended up doing over 100 hours of community service during the baseball season. And that sort of social responsibility, selflessness, that helped me grow up a lot as a man and understand my place and how baseball can be more than just a game. But also, the Pirates were really into mental skills. And they had multiple mental skills coaches that would go around. And some of the things I learned in the personal development, leadership, mental skills arena that year, especially from Tyson Holt. If he ever hears this, Tyson, shout out. I took so much away from it that year.
Who was the manager? Clint Hurdle?
Clint Hurdle, big league manager that year.
Yeah, so I had Clint Hurdle on here. He's been a massive influence actually in my life. It was pretty cool to get to interview him. But I know I don't get that answer too much. The Pittsburgh people want to play for the Pirates. But I do know during his tenure, it was completely different around the city and, around baseball, and, people in Pittsburgh deeply miss him. But that's awesome to hear. Now, I wasn't going to ask that question, so I appreciate you sharing that. What was maybe some of the mental skills that they taught you in that personal development space that really stuck with you?
A couple things stand out that I still think about 6-7 years later now. That you need your circle, your support circle can't just be one person. You need 6 unique roles in your life. And I love this. I say this in my keynote speech sometimes when it's appropriate. You need a cheerleader, someone that will cheer you on no matter what, and you need a bullshit meter, someone to call you on it and not just cheerlead. You need a gambler, someone to push you to take risks, and you also need a BS. Did I say BS meter already?
Yep,
or an analyst. You need an analyst. Someone to help you analyze the right risks that you should be taking versus the ones you shouldn't. And then you need a peer or a teammate, someone that's going through the same thing as you at the same time. And you also need a mentor, someone that has been there and done that before and can help you avoid the landmines. And if you think about the people in your life, understand which one's which. Because my mom is my cheerleader. But if I want her to analyze, should I try this or not, she's not the right person. My wife is either my analyst or my bullshit meter. But if I want unconditional support, I better not go to her because I'm not going to get it, right? So understanding what roles people fill in your life and even being able to communicate that to them, like, hey, I'm coming to you for this right now because this is what you do for me and you do it so well. You be you. Because sometimes people, they might be your bullshit meter, but they might think you need support. Well, that's not why I came to you. So understanding the different roles that you need people to play and making sure you're going to the right person for the right thing has been huge for me. That helped my marriage even because, if I wanted my wife to give me unconditional support, that's not our relationship. That's not who she is. And I'd be putting her in a position to fail and myself also.
You touched on this earlier, talking about self-awareness. Again, how do we ask ourselves the tough questions, or maybe what questions should we be asking ourselves to build that self-awareness of who we need and when we need it?
I think introducing these topics is huge. So one of the things I do outside of keynote speaking is I coach a leadership program called Spark Brilliance. It was created by Jackie Insinger. She wrote a book, Spark Brilliance. It was designed for corporate leaders. So it was designed as a top-down, culture-changing leadership coaching practice, right? What we did recently was we took the framework of this leadership coaching and we put it over the format of education. First, we coached principals and administrators on how to be better leaders for their teachers. And then recently we went to at-risk charter schools in Idaho and we taught teachers how to be better leaders for their students. And what's happened in this school is reading levels have increased by 49%, even though we're not talking about reading. And math schools have improved 30 to 40%, even though we're not talking about math, right? We're talking about giving personal development to kids that are at risk of going in the wrong direction and teaching them how to first lead themselves and giving them a safe space. So when you ask, how do we help people with self-awareness? How do we help people mature for youth, for early age, for younger people? I think the first thing is introducing them to it, because a lot of these leadership development programs are designed for adults that have the maturity, that have the age and experience and the budget for it. But when we can bring some of these trainings and personal development stuff to young people, they probably need it more.
Incredible. Something you attested to teaching humility was seeing one of your idols, Mike Piazza, pick up baseballs after practice. What was it that resonated so deeply with you that it impacted you specifically on that humility piece?
Oh, well, so the story is I was 10, maybe 12, and the best player on my little league team. And my dad was the coach. My dad always rewarded effort, and I hit, and I wasn't hitting anymore. Somebody else was about to hit, and I didn't want to pick up the balls. And we went to the Dodger game the next day. He said, "Who's your favorite player?" I said, "It's Mike Piazza on the Dodgers, at least." And we went to BP, and he's like, "Hey, look who's picking up the balls. Mike Piazza's picking up the balls. If Mike Piazza's not too good to pick up the balls, you're not too good to pick up the balls." And it's a big part of he was a catcher, I was a catcher. Representation. There's so much research on how important representation is. Seeing someone you have respect for, seeing someone who you can see yourself in, use them as an example to what's possible, to what you should be doing, everything.
What is it about you catchers that you guys are just tough? Is it you're tough because you're catchers, or you're a catcher because you're tough? Because someone who I've become close friends with over the years is Fort McHenry, and Michael Fort McHenry. And it's every catcher I talk to, I feel like has just the same type of mentality, profile, and kind of like just get after it mentality. Is it innate to the position, or does the position make you that way?
I don't know. Maybe it might be self-selecting, because you get your butt kicked for sure. Every time, after a certain age, once I was not crying on the ground, every time I'd get smacked with the foul ball in the arm or the inner thigh or the balls, it would go through my head. I would just start laughing. I would say, "You wanted to be a catcher, right?" So there's part of it where the kids that are too scared or the kids that can't handle it won't play the position. But then if you're going to be good at it, you got to lean in. It's that mental toughness piece.
Yes, it's, going back to the reframing, this is what you asked for. Like, this is exactly what you asked for. And then, did you think it would be easy? The answer is no. And then it's okay, let's get back to work. It just took me forever to learn that piece. You credited playing for Team Israel to filling a void that you didn't know you had. What was the void that it filled for you?
Yeah, that experience changed my life. And I wrote about it in my kids' book.
Well, that's where we'll go next. So by all means.
I'm going to borrow some words from a letter that I received from a man that read my book, because I think he said it better than I can. I got a letter in the mail from a man. He said, "I'm Jewish, my wife's Catholic, just like your parents. We celebrate Christian holidays and Jewish holidays, just like your parents. And I've always noticed a sadness in my boys, in my kids, that I couldn't place, that I couldn't put my finger on. And when we read your book, my boys said, 'Dad, that's what I've been feeling. I've never been able to express it before.'" And to me, that was so cool, because, when you do something like publish a book, it's a big undertaking. You don't make a lot of money off of it. But you hope it touches people, right? You hope people resonate with it. And, the famous saying, everybody's like, "Oh, well, if it just touches one person," right? This was the guy that it touched more than anything. And there's a line in the book. Ryan has a Jewish mom and a Catholic dad. He felt like he had to pick one. He was confused and sad. And when the first ever reading I did at a elementary school, I was reading the kindergartners. They're too young to grasp the concept. I started crying reading it. And I realized in that moment, I said, this book is more vulnerable than I realized. Because I didn't feel like I had a community outside of my family that I felt like I belonged to. Like, my family was tight. We were happy. I was a happy kid, had loving parents. But when we celebrated holidays, I always felt like an outsider because I was half of this and half of that, but not wholly anything. So playing for Team Israel and feeling like I was embraced by the Jewish community, it felt like I was finally a part of something.
So would you say it took until 2020, or I believe that was the Olympic year, for you to feel like you fully belonged somewhere?
Yeah, 2016 was the first time I played for the team.
So it took till 2016 to feel like you fully belong.
Yeah, it's 30 years old.
In your book, how do you coach people to do that younger?
Well, the book is for a 6 to 9-year-old audience. So
Yeah, hey, that's when it starts.
yeah, no, I think my hope. So every time I sign the book, I sign, "Do what you love and find where you belong." And the story is that I didn't feel like I had a religious community or a larger community. My family was my community. My team was my community. So I stuck to baseball, and baseball brought me back around. And it's through the vision of a baseball story, but it's not about baseball, right? It's about doing what you love. That could be dancing, playing basketball, singing, doing art, riding horses, whatever it is that you love to do. Find your people.
What are the defining principles in your life now that give you success and fulfillment without baseball?
Big question. Defining principles. I don't know that I've defined them. Family, first of all. I try to provide, be present, lead by example. My family. I guess I try to lead by example in the community and in my keynotes as well, but do the right thing.
When did you know it was time to move on from baseball and to chase other passions?
When my daughter was in the failure to thrive weight class and I was trying to hit sliders and I didn't care anymore.
What about that put it into perspective?
It was the first time I had something I had a reason, right? I've never been a person that ran away from anything. A challenge, a struggle, a strikeout, a guy throwing 105. But my daughter needed me. My family needed me. I wanted to be present and allow her to sleep in her own bed every night instead of move around 65 times in 15 years.
How hard was that on you emotionally going through that?
Not hard at all. It was the easiest decision I ever made. Making the transition and figuring out what to do next, another story. But
Talk about that.
Walking away from the game, I thought deciding not to play was going to be the hardest decision I ever made because I did it for my daughter at the time. It felt easy. Disassociating my identity as an athlete and deciding what to pursue next, much more difficult.
Talk to me a little bit about that. That is why I started my company.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through this. I think most athletes in some capacity go through it. Whether you only play into high school, right? If you started playing at 5 years old and you woke up in the morning excited to play baseball, you decide what to eat or not so that you're in shape for your sport. You decide when to go to the gym, what time to go to bed, who to hang out with, why not to do drugs. A lot of my decisions were informed by trying to be the best baseball player that I could be. As much as you can tell yourself it's what you do, not who you are, becomes who you are. And the thing that helped me the most was reading the first half of a book called Work Identity. I didn't even finish the book. The first half was enough to help me. I actually told the story so many times I should just finish the book. And what it helped me understand is that as humans, we think that transition happens by making a pros cons list, thinking about it a lot, making a decision, and then going and acting on it. But major transitions don't actually work that way. You need to try things. You need to step into that world, see what the world looks like while you do the thing, and see how the world reflects back at you as you do the thing. So for a couple off seasons when I didn't know if I'd get a job, I sold mortgages. And I saw the world reflecting back at me. Why are you doing this? And I saw myself doing it and seeing the things that were frustrating. I did some TV for the Rockies last year, pre and post game show. And in that case, I saw the world saying, oh, that makes sense. That's cool. And I saw myself enjoying it. And then I started keynote speaking. I started leadership coaching. And you have to try the thing, because as much as you think you can make a pros cons list, it's going to be incomplete.
So when you say the world was reflecting back on you and giving you these signals, for example, selling mortgages, how did you know, or what was the signal that you saw?
You talk to people, every time you talk to someone and, you've been doing one thing for a long time, or you try something new, like everybody's like, how's it going? You ask the question, or you see a face that they make, or the way they ask questions. You know how, right? Like if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, or that isn't right for you, and you're paying attention, you'll know.
My listeners are going to get sick and tired of hearing about identity, but it comes up in every athlete conversation. And it is the founding principle of my company, because I struggled so hard moving away from football. And as it comes up, every conversation, unprompted, without me asking about it, it just further emphasizes the point of how tight who we are is with the sport that we play, and how hard that transition can be. And it's awesome because I hear different answers every single time. Every single time. Nobody has the same recipe for success of moving on from the game. And as long as that keeps happening, I'm going to keep letting that conversation happen, because it's different for everybody. And I'm not sure that there is a game-winning recipe for it. I think it's something, like you said, you have to lean in. You have to identify what you want in different ways to do that. How much of your life now is leaning into doing hard things, or are you just seeking things that you enjoy?
A lot of my life right now has been, for the last year, saying yes to almost everything.
You ever seen the movie Yes Man?
Yeah, I have.
Is it like that, or is it?
I love Jim Carrey. It's less about drinking 47 Red Bulls and running with the group, but it's, hey, you should meet this person. Yes. Hey, a couple of years ago, you should try selling mortgages. Yes, let me try it. Hey, you want to come speak to my company? We only have $500 budget. Yes. And hey, you need a videographer? Yes. Hey, you should go invest in this keynote speaking school because it'll help you. Yes. Hey, do you want to try being on TV? Yes. And it's been such an opportunity to test things out, see what I like, that now, after a year of trying to say yes to everything, now I have a little bit of momentum in a couple directions, and I am now starting to decide, what should I say no to? And you see a lot of successful people, or at least I have a lot of successful people saying, understanding when to say no is so powerful, or the power of the word of saying no. Well, I think that only comes once you've said yes to a lot of things and you know what you should be saying yes to. Because if you say no to everything right away, you may be missing opportunities. But once you understand what your yeses are, what's going to move the needle for you, then you say no to the other things.
What have you found is moving your needle?
Speaking has been taking off big time. I'm speaking to my 5th and 6th Fortune 100 companies in the next 2 weeks. I'm starting to get some nice fees going in the speaking realm and making a really positive impact. I'm really enjoying you see people nod or take notes, or you see a light bulb turn on in their head, and you've given them something valuable that they can use in their life. And that impact really, really gets me going. I've also been coaching in the Chicago Cubs organization, the minor leagues, going from minor league team to minor league team working with the catchers. And I get a lot out of that too, making an impact with the young players. A lot of things where I feel like I'm making an impact, and I feel like it also moves the needle in my own life. And I still need to get better at making the transition to saying no to the right things. But I think saying yes to a lot of things has opened up some interesting doorways for me this year.
So I've started engaging in some public speaking as well, speaking to college teams, high school teams. And for me, public speaking was always such a fear. And I hated getting up in front of people and talking about something, whether it was a presentation or whether it was something serious, like the things I talk about on the show. It wasn't until I started to actually force myself to do those things where I was like, this is the closest I've felt to playing, the same type of adrenaline kick to playing. Still not the same. I know I'll never get the same, but it's the closest thing I've had since then. What's next for you? Obviously, you got some things going. What is something you're most excited about coming down the line here?
Yeah, on Friday, I'm speaking to a Ford dealership. Next week, I'm speaking to Microsoft. Just need to continue building my book of business in that regard. I really enjoy it, like I said, and been getting great feedback from the teams I speak to, from the leaders that bring me in, about the impact I'm making on their team, and how they continue to use the language and the message that I give them for months and months afterwards. So that makes me feel really good. Just continuing to find ways to make an impact.
You reflect a lot of the lessons from some of the people I talk to in terms of servant leadership, and you appear that you're well on that way and are already doing it. So love seeing this. Can't thank you enough for coming on today. If there's anything you want to plug, or if there's, where people can find you, please take the next time to give us that info.
Yeah, I am easy to find. Ryan Lavarnway on LinkedIn, on Instagram, R Lavarnway. I don't use my X very much, but I'm on there too. Check out my website, ryanlavarnway.com, for everything I'm doing. If you want to message me about the book or about a speaking gig or whatever, I answer all my own social media requests and messages. I'm a real person. I don't have a team or a robot doing it for me, so don't be afraid to reach out.
Appreciate you, man. Can't thank you enough. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Download, rate, subscribe to the podcast. 5 stars only, baby. Check us out at athleticfortitude.com. Thanks again, Ryan.